certification of the quorum. Yeah.
Steve Epperson,
Here.
Richard Cordes,
Here.
Babette Ellis. Here. Sherry Ferguson. Here. Joseph Levine.
Here.
Natalie Lynch.
Here.
Melanie Mercer. Here. Paul O'Neill.
Oh.
Kimberly Popke. You do have a quorum.
Okay, the next item on the agenda will be the approval of the minutes. Do you need to read those now, or do we just need to vote to approve them?
I'm sure you need to actually vote on the approval.
I'm going
Take
to
a vote.
approve the minutes.
Yes, sir.
I second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the minutes, right hand. Unanimous. Okay, we're going to move now to the public comment. Anyone wishing to address the advisory board now, well, let me back up here. You have already submitted your forms. The next agenda would be the staff reports, and I've been asked to move staff reports to last and go straight into public comment. And also, I'd like to ask the board to refrain from or abstain from questioning the commenters until we move through that section. We'll have discussion down in F, and everybody will have time for that at that point there. We're going to be pushed on time anyway, so I think that would help speed the process up. So,
Mr.
first
Chairman.
public comment is going to be.
Mr. Chairman, this is Brian Francis. Have you established a time period for the speakers?
Establish what?
A time period, how long
No,
do you speak?
okay, it's going to be a 3-minute time limit.
Okay.
So, I had that here, I just didn't get down to it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
And-
for the record, I think it'd be appropriate for you to explain the rationale for moving the agenda items in light of the potential for a lack of a quorum.
Okay, we have the real possibility here that we're going to lose our quorum at sometime after noon, and that's the reason there will be nothing in the staff reports that's going to have to be voted on, and if there is, maybe we can get a vote while we still have a quorum here.
Thank you,
That
sir.
it?
Yes, sir.
We ready to go to the comments now? Skip Trimble.
Thank you. My gear here, but I wanted to make a demonstration during my time during my 3 minutes. First of all, I want to say hi to most of you again. It's been a quick 4 years since we were here last to be making these comments. I'm here to represent myself and the Texas Humane Legislation Network, and we're interested in trying to improve the regulations as far as the health and safety of the dogs in these breeder facilities. I think we've come a long way. I think the breeder program is working well, and I congratulate the staff over there for how they've handled this. It's been difficult, but I think it's gone well. What I'd like to propose is that we set a standard for the size of the cage that's larger than the standards that are in the current rules. The way they got there in the current rules is, if you will recall, they just adopted USDA rules. And USDA rules came into place in the 70s when a lot of the rules pertain to facilities that were using animals for exploration, using animals for drugs and so forth like that. And those animals didn't last long. I mean, they were there for maybe 6 months, and then they were either euthanized or turned out. So the formula by which they set the minimum standards for cages was you take the tip of the dog's nose and measure it to the base of the tail. This doesn't include the tail, just the base of the tail. And then you add 6 inches to that number and square it. So when you do that, you have what I've shown here in white. This would be the dog that's 18 inches from the tip of the nose to the base of the tail. And we don't know how long the tail is or what's happening to that tail, but this is it. So you can see what they have here, can barely turn around. When they do, they're going to be bumping into the sides of the cages. If they do anything at all as far as defecation, urination, it's very, very difficult for them to avoid it. So what we're proposing is you take that same formula and you multiply it by 2, and that makes you end up with this orange platform. So it's not like we're trying to create something huge, but we are trying to create something that allows an animal that's living their entire life in a cage to have some degree of room and some degree of means to lay down and move around and get a little bit of exercise. I happen to have a little dog that's just about the size of this, and she had an ACL surgery. And they required her to be in this size for, I think it was 2 months, out a little bit to take her on a walk, but she was there. She literally almost went crazy. I mean, she was very housebroken, but there's times when if they can't get out and scratch.
Thank you, Mr. Turnbull. You've expired your 3 minutes.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. The red one indicates time.
Do what?
Pam's gonna be your official timekeeper.
Your red indicates time.
Okay.
That's-
Well, I
that's
have my
usually-
stopwatch going here.
That's all right. We appreciate you being the Boy Scout on that, Mr. Chairman. But we're gonna take care of you. So Tam will be the timekeeper. She'll build rate. So Mr. Trimble has 15 more seconds.
Okay, we
Okay.
apologize.
So the point
Yes, sir.
is that she defecated and it was all over her because she couldn't get away from her own defecation. Let's give them a little bit better life. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Trammell.
Thank you.
Our next commenter will be Kane Jarl. Is that correct? Kane, you step forward.
I was a doctor in my other life, so
Okay.
Katie, is it?
Is it
Katie
Kane?
Jarl.
Katie Jarl,
Katie, okay.
yes. So, good morning. As I stated, my name is Katie Jarl, and I am the Texas Senior State Director for the Humane Society of the United States. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to be here today and comment on the review of the licensed breeders' rules. We would like to start by expressing our appreciation to the department for the effort that your staff has put forth thus far on implementing the new law. The HSUS has acquired records from your department indicating that many breeders whose conditions were deficient and harmful to dogs have been issued fines and warnings under the current rules. Many of these breeders are not licensed by the USDA, and thus the welfare of their animals would go unchecked without the oversight of TDLR. There is no doubt that the enforcement of the rules has in many cases resulted in higher standard of care for breeding dogs in Texas. For these reasons, we find the program extremely valuable. The HSUS suggests increasing the safety and comfort of the dogs in order to fully meet the mandate by eliminating the option of cage stacking. Stacking primary enclosures is severely harmful to dogs housed in such cages. When cages are stacked through the use of multiple tiers, dogs can suffer in the following ways. Airflow is reduced, light is limited, and some dogs live in almost complete darkness, which can lead to psychological harm. Dogs in stacked cages live in unsanitary conditions because cages are difficult and if not impossible to clean. It makes cleaning out the feces, urine, wastewater, hair, and other filth from higher cages that falls onto the dogs in lower cages extremely difficult. Access to the dogs is impeded, which often results in dogs being left inside cages for long periods, depriving them of exercise, socialization, and medical attention. Dogs also live less visible to the operators, making it more likely for medical and sanitary conditions to be overlooked. Stacking often goes hand in hand with the overcrowding of dogs, which contributes to high levels of ammonia, fly infestations, and rapid disease transmission. And generally, stacked cages do have wire flooring, which has its own set of issues, but also means that when dogs' legs slip through the wire, they can be injured by kicking, scratching, and biting from other dogs. We do strongly recommend that the state prohibit the stacking of primary enclosures for the above stated reasons. 5 states already prohibit stacking altogether, including Pennsylvania, a major puppy mill state with more than 800 mills. Oregon, Nevada, Washington, and West Virginia are also included in that list, and there are several other states that place limitations on stacking. So we encourage the advisory board to recommend that those stacking provisions are eliminated from what's allowed in the rules. And with that, I thank you very much. I do have some collateral material that highlights some of the stacking issues that have been passed out to you. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is going to be Paula Fairchild.
Good morning. My name is Paula Fairchild. I've never spoke before a crowd, so be patient. A little history. I spent 6 years serving our country, United States Marine Corps. When I was honorably discharged, I became a stay-at-home mom in order to raise my kids and be there, and I supplemented our income by raising dogs. That being said, I was appalled at a gentleman. I raised my kids, with 2 most important traits. That was to work hard and to be honest. With that being said, I was appalled at the last meeting when the same display that happened today was presented. There's no way my dogs could even mate in those in that size of cage. Those are the general sizes of cages, even though it's the minimum that the general public uses to house train their dogs. Our dogs are not kept in cages that small, and you were deceived by that. The rest of the law also says if they were kept in that, they were to be turned out into exercise yards that were 300 times their size. You have people out there in the field that are hired by this organization to check up on us. Why are we not going to them and asking them what's actually happening out there? Is what they're saying against what we're doing actually a fact? Omission of the truth is the same thing as lying. Whether you guys knew you were being deceived or not, I don't know. But I take it personal when somebody attacks my business to tell the general public what I'm doing is wrong or illegal or not for the welfare of my dog. The best place for me is out there with my dog. It's a yard full of unconditional love, unlike the general public. I can go to the grocery store and buy 5 or 6 bags of dog food, and I'm questioning, oh, I hope that's going to a rescue. Nobody questions how many groceries I have and how many kids I'm feeding when I'm buying groceries. We're just pinpointed constantly, and we're not doing things are wrong. That's a passion of mine. That's a job that I love. And if you need to get with those that are in the field, USDA was established years ago. There's the science, the business of working with the animals, knowing what the animals need. It's not what it's been painted to be. I wouldn't be doing it for 20 years, and I promise you, if I get on some of these sites and I read about my career, I just soon go to the barn and hang myself from what I read about what I'm doing. It's not that, and it's not what the rest of my fellow breeders do. I hope the board understands that as a professional breeder, we're always concerned about our animals and regulations are to abide by. Our presence for meetings like this are not easily attended by any of us. Our bosses, our dogs, don't understand a day off because of how society has deceived us about our profession. We're extremely cautious who we leave in attendance of our animals. I personally won't leave my animals with anybody but a trusted family member. Fortunately, I have that. Secondly, I know a very few who would do the job.
I'm sorry, time's up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is going to be Margaret Smith. I think to save a little bit of time to get people here, I'm going to go ahead and announce who the following speaker will be, just to speed things up. The following speaker is going to be Steve Robertson.
Good morning. My name is Margaret Smith. I'm from Van, Texas, and I just wanted to speak similarly to what Paula has said. I want to speak positively about our dogs. My husband and I started this business in 2006, started it for our retirement income. My husband has been former hospital administrator. He worked as a physician recruiter for several companies and has traveled abroad and nationwide, placing physicians in hospitals. I'm an RN and have worked for 35 years in different areas of the hospital. And the latest of the positions is Director of Nursing in 2 or 3 of those positions. We have raised beautiful puppies since 2006. We have customers that are repeat customers. They love their puppies. We have a Facebook page that is public to everyone. We have a website that is public to everyone. We have many comments on that Facebook page and pictures that our customers have sent to us. They are so happy with their puppies, and they refer us to other customers. And we have very influential people that are our customers as well, all over the USA, even Alaska. We have physicians, we have lawyers, we have veterinarians as customers, we have nurses, we have writers that write for local columns and international columns. We have people that also work in oil fields. We have people that are hairdressers. We have people from every walks of life. And these people love their animals. They take them on as family members. They are just that, family members. And if they have lost a pet or a Yorkshire Terrier prior to coming to us, they are devastated. They grieve for a year or more until they are able to replace that family member. And they take their puppies with them, their Yorkies with them, everywhere they go. If you look on our Facebook page, you'll see that they take them to the beach, they take them to the lake, they take them out on the boat in Florida. They take them everywhere with them. We had a physician in Washington, D.C., who bought a first-class ticket for her Yorkie to fly from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles. And when she flew to Los Angeles, her friends had a baby shower for her puppy. And she said that she really loved the desert in California. And then she bought her a first-class ticket back to Washington, D.C. And then guess what? 2 years later, she bought another puppy from us. And she travels everywhere with these puppies. They are her family. And we just want to express that people do have a right still to purchase puppies, to get puppies,
Sorry, your time is up.
Yorkies. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret.
Yes.
Steve, are you ready?
I'll wait.
You wave yours. When you wave it, it's lost. You can't. Okay. The next speaker will be Nell Levy.
Good morning.
Good morning, Nell.
I'm Nell Levy. I'm licensed Texas breeder number 194. I've always been an animal lover. As a child, we were only allowed to have one family dog, so I compensated by having 54 pet chickens, and they all had names. I've been active in the Texas Breeders Association since its onset in September of 2012. I followed the laws and complied with TDLR's rules and regulations with no non-compliant issues. As breeders, we all had a learning curve. The new law brought us lots of work, added expenses, endless paperwork, I hate paperwork, and plenty of frustrations. I think we all have settled into the law with its rules and regulations quite well, and we want to thank TDLR for their help and support in helping us with this new endeavor. But with that being said, it seems that our best efforts will never be good enough for some people. When licensing became the law, there were those breeders that laughed at us and told us that if we stepped forward and got licensed, that we were painting a target on our backs, that they would, ignore everybody else and just persecute us. It almost seems like they've been correct. imagine our frustration when we're doing everything that we possibly can do, following the rules and doing everything that not only makes you happy, but our customers happy, and of course our dogs happy. And then these other people that aren't licensed, you know, they're going about their business as usual with no rules, no laws, no regulations, and no consequences. I live in a small area. I'm kind of secluded from everybody else. There's not a licensed breeder within 100 miles of where I live. And I live near Beaumont, so it's not like, you know, Timbuktu or anything. But they laugh at me because I do sales tax. They tell customers that I'm not supposed to charge sales tax, that I'm just keeping that money. And it just goes on and on and on like that. So I really ask that TDLR really look at the rules and the regulations being enforced on the people that are just totally ignoring the law, instead of people like us that are trying our best to do what y'all want us to do and what's right for our dogs. Thank you.
Thank you, Nell.
Could I get your name a second?
Nell Levy.
Okay, thank you.
Joe Guthrie, and following Joe will be Deborah Westerheim.
I waved mine, I'm Deborah.
Okay, after Joe, then we will move on to Robert Yarnell.
I'm Joe Guthrie. I've been a licensed breeder in Texas since the onset of the law in September of 2012. I think the TDLR inspectors are doing their job to enforce the current rules and regulations. Each of us that are represented here meet or exceed the cage requirements that there are now. Excuse me. The representation that you saw earlier today is not how our dogs live. The TDLR inspectors, they've done a fantastic job to ensure that we are following the rules and doing things as we're required. Most of the conditions and the things that you saw today in the pictures you got are from unlicensed illegal breeders. The licensed breeders are not the problem here. It's the unlicensed breeders that are out there doing things and giving the rest of us who are trying very hard to do what's right a bad name. And perhaps instead of increasing the rules and regulations and changing the things that's already working in here, we spend more time in stopping the unlicensed illegal breeding in the state of Texas. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Robert Yarnell will be here, and following Robert, we will go to Bobby Barnett.
My name is Bob Yarnell. I'm president of the American Canine Association. I've been involved in, as was described earlier, the Pennsylvania laws and the writing of many laws across the United States. The American Canine Association commends the state of Texas and the Department of Agriculture and the inspections of the kennels. But we feel, as was described earlier here today, the size of the primary enclosure, what was left out, the size of that enclosure is only based on if it's also connected with a secondary enclosure. Primary is like the bedroom, secondary enclosure is the exercise area. So that if you look into the law, that's specifically how it states. So in addition to that, and when you're talking about multi-stacking, indeed, the method or anybody utilizing the techniques of stacking cages on top of each other, as was described, wire cages with wire bottoms, is illegal. And there must be a surface that is impervious. There must be sanitation and design that doesn't allow any excrement, urine, feces, anything to, it must be able to be evacuated and sanitized on a daily basis. So the pen designs and the kennel designs of today are done in that way, and if they are not correctly designed, then they're illegal. And your state already has, and your inspection already has a way for doing away with those. So that's just not the case. Unless it's a illegal unlicensed kennel, then indeed they may be correct. We do ask that if they're saying this is the case, to please say what is the name and address of the kennel that is doing it, and then you can talk about facts and not rumor. We feel it is our stance that the great achievements that have been done in the state of Texas should be continued at this level, and if we find that indeed there is what is being said is being done, then indeed we should address that, but the laws currently do that as is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert. Bobby Barnett, and Bobby will be followed by Chloe Waterman.
Morning.
Good morning.
Bobby Barnett. I'm licensed breeder 115. And there's a misconception on cages. Number one, I don't believe there's a person here or a licensed breeder that raises their dogs in a cage. The cage, I use cages. I have 6 cages. They're about the size of this table, a little bit wider. And the only use for that cage is for my females to whelp in to keep my puppies clean with the wire bottom and safe. I raised dogs on the ground when I first started 20 years ago. I walked out there devastated. A chicken snake was eating my dachshunds, puppies. I immediately bought a building and bought cages. Hadn't lost a puppy to a snake yet now. But nobody raises dogs in a cage. They have runs and pens. You bring them into your whelping room to have babies once or twice a year. They're in there 6 to 8 weeks, then they're put back out. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby.
Awesome.
Chloe, and then she'll be followed by Daniel Beard.
Hi, Chloe Waterman with the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak before you today. And we'd also like to start by thanking TDLR for its efforts over the past 5 years in establishing and enforcing the program. We believe that licensing and routinely inspecting breeders who otherwise won't have any eyes on them in many of these cases has led to substantial improvements for both animal welfare and the Texas families who end up purchasing the puppies. But to realize the full intent and potential of the program, the department must expand upon its standards of care for breeding dogs, particularly with regard to the animals' enclosures. And it sounds like from the testimony that we've heard today that most, if not all, of the breeders in the room are already meeting on the 3 simple requirements that we're asking for. So I think that that is fantastic news, and it goes to show that responsible breeders already consider increased cage sizes, a ban on wire flooring, and a ban on stacking to be good husbandry practices. The statute requires TDLR to promulgate rules to ensure the overall health, safety, and well-being of each animal. And to do that, the regulations must be strengthened. We have submitted written comments to you, but I'll focus today on the need to ban wire flooring. The current regulations allow for floors to be constructed entirely of metal wire or wire mesh and do not require a solid or resting surface for the dogs. This can cause severe physical and psychological distress for dogs who frequently spend their entire lives in these enclosures. Dogs forced to live on wire flooring have painful sores and lesions, infections and cysts between the toes, broken bones, toenails that curl into the paw pads from lack of pressure on the nail, and toenails being ripped out when they get caught on the wire. Wire flooring is not comfortable for a dog, so they avoid normal behaviors like resting or lying down, forcing them to stand for unnaturally long periods of time. These injuries are among the most common cited by USDA inspectors and require costly veterinary care that could have otherwise been prevented. While the regulations require that flooring does not allow dogs' feet to pass through any openings in the floor, in practice this is a major problem. Any opening that is big enough for feces to fall through is big enough for a paw or toe to fall through. When dogs and puppies have attempted to pull a limb back through the wire, it has caused deep lacerations and even broken bones. Wire flooring is less sanitary than solid flooring. Feces do not always readily fall through wire mesh. It falls through when dogs grind it through the wire with their feet, which is unsanitary. Both the dogs themselves and the wire become caked in feces. There's ample photographic evidence from the USDA showing feces sitting on top of wire flooring, which is in part why both the American Veterinary Medical Association and the American Kennel Club recommend at least providing a solid resting service. In fact, at the 2012 Advisory Committee meeting, members agreed that solid or partial flooring was in the best interest of the animals based on the AVMA recommendations. At the very least, we recommend animals be provided with a solid floor or resting board that covers at least 50% of the floor space in the enclosure. In closing, I'll say that there is overwhelming public support for strengthening these regulations. Of the 1,490 comments submitted, all but 30 were in support of increasing the standards. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Daniel? And the next, Daniel Baird, and I think we're to the final speaker is going to be Steve Bruno.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Daniel Beard. I represent Almost Puppies. We're a small hobby kennel that's been in operation for 50 years. My mom started back in '67 in Houston. We're now out in Katy. My dad helps her out. He's 84, she's 77. And I want to extend a hearty thank you to the TDLR inspectors for being so kind and patient with my parents and understanding their worries and anxieties and being very professional. It's been a great relief after every one of those inspections. Leading up to it, not so much so, but people like to worry. Another question I have, and I'd like to see this whole organization get more power, and I was wondering if we could contact the state controller and in these meetings have a metric to know how well we're doing. And how well we're doing could be like our total sales tax contributions to the state, because I don't think anybody has a clue what these breeders are contributing to the local economy. And I think that would be one nice metric to add to our legislatures when we go talk to them. The other thing I'd like to bring up is a follow-up to last year's comments I made about letting the dogs out. And they are still out. But through great expense and great effort, I built a very large fence around the property, and I should have all that taken care of. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. Steve? Bruno.
Good morning. My name's Steve Bruno. I'm here representing the Professional Pet Breeders of Texas. Thank you all for the opportunity to speak. I've got some letters and comments from folks who weren't able to attend that I'd like to hand in and make sure you can all have for the record. Today we're advocating for no change in the rules because the law and rule work as they are set today. This is evidenced by two facts. TDLR inspectors have not come back, to my knowledge, with reports of issues regarding cage size or stacking. The public has not complained to TDLR specifically about this issue. I certainly understand that pictures can exist from other parts in the country or illegal places, but the licensed breeder in Texas is under adequate rules, sufficient rules and regulations that are doing what the law is intended to do, which is to protect animals. I can think of no occupation that's more regulated than the licensed breeder at TDLR. Not only must the licensed breeder put together a plan for exercise, feeding, etc. That plan must be reviewed by a veterinarian, which is a good thing, and then it's audited. It's audited on several ways. It's on the veterinarian who signed off on the plan to make sure that it's still in place. It's on the breeder, and then it's regularly inspected by TDLR to ensure that compliance is being followed. One of the issues that we would suggest, and where we do find frustration, is with the unlicensed breeder. There are still many out there, and the folks who are the licensed breeders in this room and the members of the Professional Pet Breeders of Texas advocate for all who should be licensed to become licensed. We experience significant burdens for our licensed members on occasion because of the unlicensed breeder. At the end of the day, there is no need for a change to the law or the rules in this program, again, because this program is working. The legislature has not contemplated any further changes. We've not heard from the direct eyes and ears, the TDLR inspectors, and we've not heard from the puppy buying public in Texas that any changes need to be made. So we strongly encourage you not to recommend any changes and to keep the program working as it is and to help us help you bring in the unlicensed breeder. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I guess we can move on to agenda item F. With the crossing up here, I want to make sure that I'm where I need to be.
Mr. Chairman, before we leave, I'd just like to do a few introductions. With us today, we have the Chairman of the Texas Commission on License and Regulation, Mr. Mike Ayers-Mendez. We have Commissioner Deborah Yurko, and we have the Vice Chair, Mr. Tom Butler, present. And I just think it's a statement about their interest and how important these issues are to our commission. So I just wanted to acknowledge their presence here. And I believe Charles will assume the table.
Mr. Chairman, members, for the record, Charles Johnson, Assistant General Counsel. Agenda item F in front of you today is a request to recommend to the Commission the readoption of Chapter 91. This is a process that's mandated by the Government Code, that every 4 years rules are reviewed to determine whether or not they're still necessary. And so we're asking, the way the Commission does it here is it's a two-part process. First, we publish the readoption, and normally people will respond to that readoption with suggested changes to the rules, as was done here. What we've done for your convenience is to give you copies of those comments. We also presented copies of those comments to the Commission to illustrate the magnitude of the concerns about the rules. And so, in this case, there were basically 4 major categories of comment. There were others, but the major ones are the ones we highlighted to give the Commission and to give you a sense of the gravity of the issues. One was the cage size, one was the solid flooring, the other was the environmental conditions and the stacking issue. We're recommending that you recommend to the Commission the rules be readopted with the understanding that these comments will be referred to this group and as an item on the agenda later on for the work groups to be established to review each of those comments and to dive into detail with recommended suggested changes if necessary to address the welfare issues that have been raised. So we're asking you this morning to recommend readoption of the rules with the understanding that the readoption is a status quo to allow the Commission to complete the obligation of the Government Code to review the rules and then to refer those comments to a work group for purposes of determining whether to change the rules or not.
Charles, I got one question.
Yes, sir.
On the stacking of the cages, now doesn't the statute say that you can stack it 3 times, so we don't have anything that we can do about that, right?
That's what the statute says, but again, we're kind of deferring those discussions to the work groups if you decide to point one. But the purpose of this agenda item is not to get into those details, rather to look at the broader picture of all those rules necessary. And based upon the comments would suggest that the rules are necessary, but there's a need potentially to modify those rules.
Excuse me, Charles.
Yes, ma'am.
With regard to the cage stacking, I think there is a viable, I'm sorry, this is Deborah Yurko, Commissioner Yurko. There is a viable argument that stacking is provided for in the statute. It just says up to 3, which would leave the work group to discuss 2 to 3, to be technically correct.
Thank you.
Well, this is the chairman, to be technically correct, that's not the issue. I'm sorry, I believe the statute, if I'm not mistaken, Charles, can you pull that out and read it? But I believe the statute says that it cannot be 3 or above. Prohibits 3 or above. Which means...
Prohibits above 3.
Or prohibits above 3, which I take that to mean that you can go up to 3. So I think that, if I'm not mistaken, that the rules that you currently have in place mimic the statute. And that being the case, there's really difficult to make any changes to rules because then you would be in conflict with the statute.
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Chairman, I think that for purposes of this agenda item, we've kind of gone astray a little bit, in that this is merely the readoption. The actual discussion about the issues will be in the next agenda item. And so for purposes of this item, We were simply asking you consider recommending that the rules in fact be readopted with the understanding that the advisory board, through its work groups, will be working on changing and making amendments to those rules.
So if we make a motion, Mr. Chairperson, all we're doing is saying we're renewing the 4-year.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And reserving the right to carry on with the process, to discuss and
As
potentially
is.
change the rules.
As is.
No, with the provision to discuss.
So,
If I may clarify, I may have caused confusion.
you did.
The sole purpose of this agenda item is to recommend readoption of the existing rules status quo, with the understanding that once the readoption has taken place, this group, through its work groups, will continue working on changing, if necessary, the actual rules.
I'm going to start with the first part of your
Okay.
sentence and not worry about the second.
Okay.
I move that we readopt 16 Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 91, dog or cat breeders, resulting from our 4-year rule review.
And if I may clarify, to recommend to the commission that it readopt the rules.
Recommend to the commission the readoption.
I'd like to put, this is Natalie Lynch, and I'd like to put a separate motion on not to readopt 16 Texas Code of Administrative Code, Chapter 1991, in light of the fact that we do not have consistent meetings and have not addressed this issue since last time we promised we would address it 4 years ago.
So do I need a second for my adoption?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. On the first motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second, and we'll do same right-hand vote again to recommend to the commission to readopt.
You may want-
We
want-
need to have a
some
discussion before we
discussion.
go to the vote.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, and I have a question, Charles, on that.
Yes, ma'am.
I think we discussed a little bit before the meeting, and I was trying to understand this, the nuance of this as well. By the fact that they are actually voting on it, does it really affect anything even if they choose not to vote on it?
No, ma'am.
Does it just basically stay the same whether they vote or do not vote?
Yes.
So what I want, my understanding was to clarify is to make this motion and go through with it does not really change anything.
We know that.
Okay,
All we're doing is making a motion on what recommendation the board makes to the commission.
Commission.
correct.
Mr. Chairman, you can entertain any discussion on that motion.
Okay.
As
Do
it's been
do we have any discussion?
But again, we're saying we reinstate and we vote on it and it stays as is, but the caveat is that the discussion then will go to committees for making changes.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that correct?
Except historically, we haven't done that.
Okay, but that caveat was not included in what you said. You just said just flat reinstate.
No, actually, that's why I was saying with the understanding that it would be referred to the advisory board through its work groups.
What we can do is make a second motion. I think that's what Babette
Yes.
wanted to do. is
Yes.
Make a second motion that we
That's
do
why I
that.
said let's divide
Correct.
those up.
Wait, can
Why
I
divide
ask?
them?
That's at a different
Well,
agenda.
let me ask you though, could we not suggest, Charles, that they take back that motion and, or Babette can modify her motion to include what you just suggested, that it would be subject to the implementation of work groups?
That's what I
Ma-
said.
Brian Francis, Executive Director. You had to throw the title around at least once tonight.
Congratulations.
Okay, thank you very much.
Congratulations
Thanks
on
so
yours.
much, I appreciate it. So the motion's out there, it's been seconded. The next agenda item
Right.
is actually going to be the action that you're talking about of being able to discuss it. I don't think you want to make this motion conditional upon a work group, because you may choose to do a work group, or you may come with a solution out of that next discussion. The process is going to move forward with you guys having an opportunity in the very next agenda item to have a full-blown discussion about any changes or amendments that factor in the public's comment that's already been heard. That's not going to be lost. The readoption is just simply a recommendation to readopt. The amendment process is attached to the next agenda. You do not lose that.
Can we, this is Natalie Lynch again, can we switch the voting, the order then, that we address these issues though? Because it may affect my vote knowing what those breakout groups are gonna look like.
The chairman could do that, but there is a motion that's been seconded that's on the floor. And I'm pretty confident in less than 3 minutes, you guys are gonna have a fully engaged discussion on the issues that you want to talk about. We're not, the meeting's not gonna be shut down after that. It's just not gonna happen.
So through all this right here now, are we still on discussion, or is there any more discussion here? Then we're gonna move on to a vote.
Yes, sir.
So, any more discussion? All in favor to readopt, right hand? All opposed? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 2. 5-2 vote. To adopt. Recommend to adopt.
Motion passes.
Motion passes.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We just want, for the record, I believe Mr. Levine made the second, is that correct?
No,
Judge Cordes. Oh, Judge Cordes said, yeah, okay. Judge Cordes, sorry about that.
Okay, are we ready to move on to 8, or G?
Meeting's over, I'm joking.
Discussion of and possible recommendation on the public comments received by the department in response to the 4-year review rule of 16 Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 91.
Mr. Chairman, again, for the record, Charles Johnson, Assistant General Counsel. This agenda item, as I referred to in the earlier item, when we published the rule for readoption, in response to that rule, we received substantial comment. Those comments were placed on the Commission's website and are part of your material today. We did that with the understanding, hopefully, that this would, the rule would be readopted, and we would then follow the Commission's process, which is to refer the comments to the advisory board for its consideration as to whether or not to make any changes to the rules in light of the comments. So we're at that stage of the process now where the comments are before you, and they've been publicized to the public, and they were part of the discussions you received today in the comment, in the public comment, and so it's in front of you now for discussion.
Sorry, where are the comments before us?
They were,
In this?
no, actually,
I don't think we.
on your computer, there's a file with the agenda.
16
There's a link to the
When you
comments.
saw that many, yeah, they're all down there.
I can't scroll mine like you're scrolling.
You should
yours.
have a PDF with the agenda, and if you hit the bookmark section, you'll open up the table of content, and you'll see 5 or 6 sections of comments.
Okay. I don't think I'm there.
I'm there. It's the same thing. See here? No, that's just what I've got showing.
See, I can look those because there's so many.
Did you take a break?
Okay, yeah, let's take a
Basically
15
what
minute, 20 minute.
15, please, not 20.
15 minute.
I prefer 5, but
Oh, here the comments are right after the licensing.
We'll meet back here at 10:18. Back to order.
Mr. Chairman, during the break, I spoke with Member Lynch, who asked and reminded me that I had sent her a synopsis of the comments. And so for the record and for the benefit of the board members, I'd like to read into the record the summary of the comments that was presented to the commission. We did this with the intent of trying to advise the commission of the major issues that were being presented in the comments. And so the summary goes like this. It says the department received approximately 1,490 public comment, including 11 after the comment period closed. Approximately 1,200 commenters expressed concerns regarding the current dog enclosure standards. Specifically, they were not strong enough and the size and conditions of the current cages and pens used for dogs in commercial breeding. The commenters encouraged bigger cage space, requiring a solid resting surface and banning stacking of cages. Approximately 170 commenters expressed concern regarding the facilities. Specifically, animals should be prohibited from being kept in an outdoor facility when the temperatures reach more than 90 degrees or less than 50 degrees. The minimum space should be doubled. The construction of the cages and pens should be made of material other than wire or wire mesh flooring. The enclosures should not be allowed to be stacked on top of one another. Approximately 40 commenters generally stated that puppy mills should be abolished and the program made more stringent. Approximately 30 commenters are seeking repeal of the program and statutes governing the breeder program. Approximately 45 commenters expressed concerns that the rules in general were not strict enough and request that more be done. That's a quick summary of the comments that are included in your packet and published on the website. Those are the major concerns and issues that were being discussed, and now they're before you for your consideration and deliberation.
Do we have any way of finding, out, do we have an issue with the licensed breeders on those issues that you named, and which ones are they? From the inspections, are we finding a problem out there?
I think they've all said there is. I mean, I think our comments definitely alluded to the fact that there are troubles with unlicensed breeders. I mean, I think every side of this.
What I'm looking for, is there any evidence from the department that we are seeing that?
With the licensed or the other? You mean, is there a
Yeah,
problem
well,
with the licensed breeders who are
exactly.
currently being inspected? Are these issues a concern?
Without speaking for compliance or field operations, I can tell you that based upon my review of the comments, my review of the internal discussions, if you look at, and I'm kind of getting ahead of myself because in the staff reports, I think they'll come to you later, there's a list of the top 10 violations of things that the inspectors have seen, and these issues that are being addressed here are not a part of that discussion.
So the issues that y'all have are not a part of this discussion here at all?
Again, not speaking for compliance or field ops, but just my observations of what I read in their reports. I see no comments that address these specific issues.
Anybody have any discussion on that?
I'm sorry, will you rephrase the topic for me?
Rephrase the topic?
Rephrase what you are asking for discussion on.
On, look at that again now.
Mr. Chairman, if I may respond to the way I perceive the question and how I answered it, because I perceive the question we're asking to be based upon the comments that were received. Has the staff encountered those problems out in the field and reported back these issues? These were issues.
Right.
And my response to that question was that based upon my review of the staff reports, and again, not speaking for compliance or field ops, I saw no reference to these specific issues.
Chairperson, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is it pertinent, Charles Johnson, for us to know if those were comments from people who are in Texas?
We have no way of knowing that, and I don't think at this point we would factor that into the discussion.
Well, you know, with that amount of input from people, you know, there's nothing wrong with discussion, all right? And possibly, you know, with that amount of input, it may not be a bad idea for us to get some work groups and just go ahead and address that discussion and discuss it and address those fittings, even if they are not something that the inspectors have been seeing. The work groups can check into that and then report back and say whether or not that there was any discrepancies in that. Now, particularly back to the stacking of cages, we looked up the statute and it does say up to 3, but that statute says, you know, up to 3. So we can't change the statute. Only the legislature can change the statute. So that's a set in stone deal by the legislature, and so it's going to be up to 3, and there's nothing we can change about that, because a breeder can have 1 or 2 or 3 levels. He or she just can't have 4. And so we're not going to change that. But I don't see any problem with discussing the cage size, addressing that again, and the flooring and the environment. You know, I'm not saying that there needs to be changes, but discussion's good, and it's not going to hurt to look at it and review what the compliance has to say and whatnot by some work groups. So I move we have some discussion among work groups.
Okay. Did I understand that the flooring is also in the statute, that we can't really do anything about that?
No,
That's
I think,
not accurate.
I think there's discretion on the flooring.
And on the stacking as well, it says that we can't make rules that that allow for more than 3.
Right.
So we can make rules that allow for less than 3.
No.
That,
Up to 3.
I'm
It
reading
says
it.
up to 3.
It does, but if you read the preceding clause, we must adopt a section that prohibits more than 3.
Yeah.
So we can do less than 3.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, for the record, read the specific statute language into the record so that we're talking about the same language. It's Section 802.0201 B7 specifically says that the standards adopted under this section must. And then 7 says prohibit. And so the action that the statute is directing the commission to do is to prohibit the stacking of primary enclosures of dogs above 3 vertical levels. And so the operative term there is prohibit the stacking of cages above 3 vertical levels.
Can I make a statement?
Yes, ma'am.
And I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but I was absolutely pleased with every breeder that came up here and made a statement, because everyone, especially the ones that are licensed and gave their license numbers, and saying that they exceed what is here. I think they would agree that, or it seems to me that they would agree that since they do, that it would be appropriate for other people to do that, and that several said there needs to be more enforcement, and that the unlicensed breeders need to be need to be investigated and made to come up to standards. And I think we have the cooperation of the good, responsible breeders, because the one fella, Mr. Yarnell, I believe it was, he said they need flooring. And he's with the president of the American Canine Association. Well, one of the issues is to ban full wire cage flooring. So I think we agree on some of the things. It's just the issue of the unlicensed people and finding those and getting those people to live up to the standards that are at least minimum, which these, again, I think everything that was brought up today by these people were minimum. I mean, they were minimum. And these people exceed those minimums. And so I think we're kind of in agreement, and I don't know why we can't work together to bring these standards up and to then find the people that are not licensed and either make them stand up to standards and or be fined and not be able to have a license, and then to put some teeth to what will happen to them if they don't.
Yes, sir.
But enforcement was huge. It was over here. It's been everywhere. The enforcement of what goes on, and if people are not indeed following through and getting licensed.
Yes, sir. And the purpose of the other work groups is to dive into those details, to find those areas of agreement, and to make recommendations as to what those standards should be.
And can that group also consult with these people and these people as well? Or do we have to just do it among ourselves?
There's nothing that prohibits the work group as long as there's not a majority of the board members participating.
Okay, because I know we read the riot act last time.
No.
Well, we can't do and can't do, and I'm like, I don't even know who I can talk to in the bathroom anymore. But.
Can I ask a motion?
I apologize for
The
that,
judge
Ms.
made a
Ferguson.
motion, and I'm going to.
But I think we ought to talk more.
Right.
I think we
The judge made a motion, and I didn't know if it was a motion that needed a second.
Yes, ma'am, it needs a second.
And then I'm going to second the judge's motion.
Repeat the motion.
Can you repeat the motion?
Judge.
Can you repeat the motion?
I made a motion to, that we discuss the 3 issues: cage size, flooring, and environment.
Can we also add an item to address unlicensed breeding? Or unlicensed breeding that we've heard so much about? I think that should be a 4th.
Okay,
Good
I'll
point.
go ahead and do that. I'll make a motion for that.
I'm not gonna agree to that. I think it should be a separate item, and I'd like that to be a separate motion personally. I think, and when we're talking about facilities, I think I'd like to stick with facilities on the motion, so I'm not gonna second the change.
Can I ask a question for discussion purposes? I'm just trying to understand, Natalie, when you made your suggestion about the unlicensed breeder activity, were you addressing that we have a work group that explores ways to ascertain who is not licensed and reach out to them? Or were you thinking of
Yes.
something else?
I agree with what she's saying. I just want it to be a separate motion. 'Cause that's
Yes.
a different category for me.
I think, again, it's just, why am I always the know what we don't know issue?
Because
we
you're a
don't
lawyer.
know. We have heard every side of this say unlicensed breeding is an issue. We're competing with people who are unlicensed. We have all these horrible conditions with people who are unlicensed. I mean, this has come up over and over again. So what are the issues with those? How do we fix it? I keep coming back to promoting this program because the other thing everybody said is that it's great. How do we promote that? And how do we promote it to unlicensed breeders? So just explore it, hopefully come out with some steps to address it that appeases and promotes the interests of all the people involved.
Okay, and Ms. Ellis, my understanding, what you're trying to do is address the issue that will be addressed in one work group?
Yeah, because I think facilities is this motion.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying, is each one of these items has its own work group.
Right,
Yes.
and that's what I'm
So
saying
4
is we're
work
talking
groups.
about 3 facility work groups first. And then if somebody wants to make a different motion.
I understand.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, and Charles, help me to understand, since those 3 are so interrelated, would it not facilitate to get the work done more efficiently to have that be one work group and possibly
think so, too.
unlicensed breeder another work group?
That's what I'm thinking,
Yeah.
but the judges.
It's a great idea.
I don't know, I'm just trying to
Right.
clarify what the point
Right.
is.
It should be under one, and the other one should be under another, and I served previously on one of many before, and this covers one work group.
That makes sense to
The
me.
other one covers a different work group.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Okay, that's all I was trying to understand.
Can I speak?
Thank you, Commissioner.
The unlicensed breeders, these people are flying under the radar. And if you look at the TDLR, for the past 4 years, I think I read we have 171 licensed, 172, thank you, licensed breeders. Okay, well, there's almost 9 million people in Dallas-Fort Worth alone. You can't convince me that there's only 170 breeders in the state of Texas, okay? It's just not happening. So it's a bigger issue than we're letting on. And so this is really the major issue, because I'm hearing from all the breeders here, pardon me, that the licensed breeders are very conscientious breeders. They want to do the right thing. They put their money where their mouth is. They build facilities, they build HVAC systems, drainage systems, feeding systems, watering systems. They spend money on their animals. Care, veterinarian care. They have good vets that are associated with their kennels. The biggest problem that we're coming up against, we see pictures on the internet and represented by groups here today that there are issues with cages. Yes, there are issues with wire cages. I would agree with that. Some of the pictures were from 5, 6, 7 years ago. Out of the 20 or so pictures posted, only one was from Texas, and that was from 2012. So, you know, and I understand their cause, and I agree with that. So there has to be some changes there. But the biggest change we have to address is going after unlicensed breeders and unlicensed breeder facilities. And until we have a work group or someone focused on that, we're gonna keep having these meetings and going on that carousel and going after the same 170 breeders or 200 breeders out of the, let's say, potential 10,000 breeders that there are really in the state of Texas, maybe more. You know, and I don't want to be, you know, a rat and say, hey, I know this kennel over here, hey, I know this kennel over there, hey, I went to visit this place over here. But unfortunately, you know, the way the laws are written and the way the breeders are interacting with enforcement, we're having to be the police officers in the state of Texas.
This agenda item just asks if we want to have discussion groups. The next agenda item appoints those work groups, okay?
But can I make just one?
I'm saying let's have discussion on these 4 items, and then the next deal, we can decide how many work groups we need, okay?
Okay, but let me make just one comment, just right quick. If you want to see some current in Texas pictures that are happening, I can get those to you.
From licensed breeders.
No, not from licensees, no. We're not talking about licensed
But
breeders.
that's what we can deal with here.
Okay, you still,
I understand, but he brought up the fact that these were out of state, et cetera, and were old. There are current, there are new, and they are in state.
You know what,
So
that
if
would
we
be in the
need
work
that-
group.
Committee Member Ferguson, that would be great if we can get that
That's-
information.
yeah. Just- I'm just
All
offering
points
that.
of data are going to help us gather that, but I think we need to stay focused. Mr. Chairman, so there is still a motion to address 3 items, and then I think Commissioner Member Lynch was adding a friendly amendment to do a 4th item.
I'm just changing my motion to add 4 items for discussion.
Okay, now is there a second for that motion?
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. Right hand in favor.
No, wait, is this for work groups of those?
This is just discussion, just discussion of those items right now. The work group will be in the next.
Help me out here, help me out.
Chairman, point of clarification, and I guess it's probably directly to Ms. Lynch. Are we talking about unlicensed breeders, or are we talking about breeders that are not regulated based on the statute?
Exempt.
Because, I mean, I think we've got 2 things here. We've got unlicensed breeders, but then we've got some breeders that just don't meet the criteria of being a licensed breeder.
That's not what we're talking about.
No, we're not including the exempt
I
breeders.
just want a point of clarification, because we keep talking about unlicensed breeders, but there's also breeders that just don't meet the statute requirements.
No, not the same.
Well,
I
I
imagine we
think this
talk
whole
about
And
that.
so that's the reason I'm trying to find out from Ms. Lynch exactly which direction you're looking at.
I'm looking at the direction of having a group address that issue and all the others raised today. I mean, I don't,
Unlicensed or those are not regulated, or required to be regulated?
I mean, I'm not gonna tell somebody they can't, so the issue that you're talking about, as I understand it, is the number, the 11 and, or the 11
As an
and 20,
example, the 11
right?
attack females.
Okay,
If they've
so-
got 10, they're not required to be licensed.
Right, so I can't imagine why we would tell people they couldn't talk about that, but that's not something I'm targeted at talking about either. I just wanna talk about it. I don't think
But
we
to
know
be-
what we need to talk about yet.
To be honest and transparent, if we were engaged in that discussion in a work group, I think we'd be inclined to cut it off. In that, having a discussion about unregulated activity that's not within our jurisdiction would not be a very useful set of discussions.
Sure. I mean, we should definitely talk about things we can fix.
Right.
No, I agree, and I think what Chairman Arizmendez was trying to do was partially educate maybe the entire audience on the internet as well as here. And so,
I do that all the
like
time, it's
angels
okay.
were singing when I spoke. Anyway.
So, yeah, and that's the thing is that those that are not required to be licensed you've got no control, and that would take a statutory change.
Right.
Right.
So, now, I'm not saying that we don't have unlicensed breeders, because we do. I agree with that. And those are the ones that would fall under those categories, and those are the ones that we need to target and take a look at.
But I don't think it's inappropriate to take a nod and say, the people that don't fall in there are really what we're targeted at, therefore we're gonna make X, Y, and Z decisions about that.
I think the work group needs to decide its purview with the TDLR staff.
Well, and just to keep us on point, we're not even talking about work groups yet. That's going to be, that's the next agenda item. Right now, we're going through the first item that's for discussion on that list. We'll hash it out, and that's going to be fodder and information for the work groups once they're created in the next agenda item to start their discussions from. So, Mr. Chairman, back to you on the first topic that Dr. Cordes put up there.
We just voted. We just did? Yeah. And we voted to unanimous to proceed.
Yes, sir.
So are we ready to move on to?
Agenda item H.
H?
Yes, sir. Now
The
we
work
have to-
groups?
No, now Natalie had said, we didn't vote on hers because we broke it out.
Okay. She never got a second
on her.
We put it
Oh,
back
wait.
in.
Oh, wait.
Oh,
Put
we
it back in
included-
the mix.
Yeah, that's what we voted, was included in.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, to clarify the record, and without going back to redo the vote, if we could just enunciate the 4 work groups that have been.
The 4 subject areas.
The 4 subject matters.
4 subject areas.
That will be referred to the work groups.
Okay, the 4 subject matters would be cage size, flooring, environment, and unlicensed breeders.
Thank you, sir.
Stacking?
You have that, Tamlin?
Which
No.
basically could be,
Not stacking.
which basically could be 2.
That is in the statute, it's not gonna change.
Gotcha.
Because we don't have this
It's
big
not
of
in
a
the
group
statute.
here that we could combine.
But it says we can't make it more
We'll
than
need to
3.
divide it.
He just clarified.
2 of them in one work group, 2 in another work group.
I don't think that's.
Mr. Chairman, if we can have the members just have a little order because everything
That was what he
all the
wanted to
sidebar
say.
discussions are being picked up. So if we can make sure that when members are speaking, they announce their names like I just did not do. Brian Francis.
I am hung up on my computer here again.
Go right and left. Go right and left. There you go.
Okay.
Go right to left.
Where's your agenda at? Oops, I ought to be close there.
Where do you need to be?
The agenda, we're on
Is that the-
H.
H, yes, sir.
Yeah. that should be,
Here. I have very
Mr.
little use of
Johnson,
we're
can
ready.
that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Ready to move on to agenda H, which is discussion and possible appointment of advisory committee work group to address rulemaking in 16 Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 91. So we've got the 4 items here. I guess it's all that we're going to be addressing here.
Yes, sir.
Do we have any discussion on, what we got first, cage size, flooring, environment, and
Unlicensed
license activity?
Mr. Chairman, just to give some guidance to you, in the past, we've had 3 work groups. One was a work group on standards, and it sounds like those first 3 items would fall neatly under that.
Okay.
And then we had a work group on compliance, and I think the unlicensed activity would fall underneath that. And then the last one was licensing, registration, and training work group. And I don't believe I've heard any items that would fall under that one.
So we're in for discussion now just to how to assimilate the work groups, or are we able to move that far yet, or we need discussion on these 4 topics?
I think if the board is open to it, there may be an opportunity for discussion on those topics. Again, whoever you decide to put on those those work groups, will have that information to work from. So.
Okay, so at this point here, we can go ahead and appoint the work groups.
Well, can I ask a question too? What was the 4th one that he read out?
Unlicensed activity.
Unlicensed activity, but there was another one that you said you didn't think was addressed here?
It was the 3rd work group that we've had in the past was licensing, registration, and training work group. We have handouts.
Registration and training?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. And that work group information is going to come to the members probably in less than 3 seconds now. It's arriving. And so you can see the purpose for each of those work groups.
Because it seems like some of the comments that I've heard have been that people don't know about the breeder bill. And so how can you comply or whatever if you don't know about it? So I think that component should be handled under the same as the unlicensed breeding, and would be the publication or the avenues where we can promote it out there to give people a chance to come on.
I think that's kind of part and parcel of the same issue. Education, registration, unlicensed activity kind of all go hand in hand.
Okay, well, just want to clarify because I get confused.
And this group needs clarification.
Are we, see if I can follow right here. The work group on the standards and the compliance work group, are we also going to be appointing somebody to the licensing, registration, and training group, or is that going to be a separate issue?
I thought it was moved, pushed together.
Well, I think based on what I heard Mr. Francis say is that in this case, we need just the two. The standards and the compliance would handle the unlicensed activity. And we did not need the registration and training.
And Charles, as is prone for Brian, I'm wrong.
Okay.
I think that third work group title is better suited
Than compliance?
for the issue. I love admitting my mistakes on the record, and hopefully my wife is listening now. I do admit when I make mistakes. That third, so I think the third work group, going to what Committee Member Ferguson was saying, is probably better suited to identifying the licensing requirements that are out there, but also dealing with the issues of unlicensed activity. They fold better under number 3 than.
But because this is a small board, do we not think we should combine 2 and 3?
Actually, I think he's saying that 3 would fall into 2 would fall into 3, so it'd be the same thing.
Well, that's what I just said.
Yes.
Put them together.
Yes.
So we're going to join those two.
So are we at a point where what we're going to want to do is appoint 2 work groups and divide the issues up? Is that where we're at?
Yes, sir.
We already divided the issues.
We've got 4 issues here. But as far as what
First 3 are
work groups?
First 3 are 1.
Yes.
The first 3 are 1 and then,
Correct.
okay.
First 3 go to work.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Okay, I move that we give the chairman authority to appoint work groups. Work group on standards for cage size flooring and environment, and a work group on licensing, registration, and training for the unlicensed breeders discussion.
Compliance
Judge Cordes,
and compliance.
that is great. We greatly appreciate that motion, but the chairman has that authority without that
Okay.
motion being made or accepted or
Okay, well then,
approved. So he gets.
do we have to make a motion to
He
do
can
work
actually,
groups?
he gets to make the appointments.
Okay. On the work groups and standards, let me make sure I got everybody on the list here, and I can appoint them whether they're here or not, right?
That's typically how it works out, isn't it?
That's a-
Must be present to lose or win.
Voluntold.
Okay, on the work group on standards.
I would,
Do that
I want to volunteer this one.
for standards.
No, I don't want to be on standard
She
anymore.
wants to be on
I want to be on the
licensing.
second.
Sherry
Okay.
wants to be on the second.
I'm ready to go ahead and make the appointments if we're good here. On the standards, Dr. Cordis, Natalie Lynch, Babette Ellis, and myself. Is that 4?
That is for your math is superb.
Okay, now let me make sure I don't double up here. Who's the other one I put on
You've got Joseph.
there? That's 4.
Natalie, me, Steve, and Babette. So you got Sherry, Paul.
On the other one, we'll put Sherry, Joe Levine, Paul O'Neill, and Kimberly.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
You're Kimberly.
Could you please find another member for Mr. O'Neill?
Did I miss?
You missed me. But I
You
want
missed
to be on
Melanie.
the compliant, I want to be on the second one, the,
Okay.
like,
That, Melanie Mercer on these, next one here. See, I don't have you checked too.
Who's our duplicate?
Mr. Chairman?
I can't be on one.
Okay, so let's make sure we're on the same page.
Okay.
without interrupting.
Let's back up.
So this is Brian Francis. Mr. Chairman, Mr. O'Neill, in recent communications, may be withdrawing from the advisory board, so I don't think it'll be prudent to appoint him to an
Okay.
advisory board seat.
So we're down to 4 and 4 then, counting me. Okay,
So,
well, that,
and he's not allowed to be on one?
no, I am.
Yes.
Yes, he can.
I am.
Okay.
He's on the
But I was
first
gonna-
one.
I was gonna make it 4 and 4. So we can still go with 4 and 4. I'll go into the second group. Let me redo this. And these are them here.
Melanie, Sherry, Joe, and,
Oh, good.
Kimberly.
That's
oh,
excellent.
Kimberly, yeah.
It'd be
Then you got
Kimberly,
it.
Joe, Sherry, and Melanie, on the second.
Mr. Chairman, so the persons who are not on the board right now would be Sherry, Joseph, Kimberly Papke, and Melanie Mercer.
They are not what now?
They are not on, they weren't on the first advisory board, so those are members if you were looking to find out.
Yeah, that's, I'm gonna put them on the second one.
Well, I should be paying attention.
Brian, you don't remember me for all these
Twice,
years?
Brian.
My boss was like in my ear, gotta listen to him.
Okay, all of our discussion could take place with the work group, so are we ready to move on?
I am not. Shocking. I would like, I think this is proper procedure, tell me if it's not. I'd like to make a motion that we have legal review on whether or not the group could recommend less than 3 cages stacked, and that if we can, in fact, make such a recommendation, that that be folded into the standards group for evaluation. Yes,
Can I
ma'am.
make a comment on that in that regard? What might be more efficient since Mr. Charles Johnson, I'm sorry, this is Deborah Yurko, Commissioner Yurko. Mr. Johnson had mentioned or had explained and went through the legal analysis why it is a non-issue at this point. That maybe what we could do is have Mr. Johnson, I think you consulted with the Attorney General's office?
Not for this interpretation, but if we can.
Okay, I think it might have been brought up to the Attorney General's office already. So maybe what might be better is at the next advisory board meeting, we get an update as to what that standard is to determine whether it should even be assigned to standards or not.
If that's the proper.
I seem to remember that was covered when we first adopted the rules.
Yes, and it was a non-issue. is what we
But
were told.
just in consideration that Committee Member Lynch was not here and present at the time.
We will do the review, and if there's an opinion, bring that to the advisory board.
Okay, so we don't need a motion.
So it's not a
that can
dead
just
issue,
happen.
but it'll be looked at and analyzed, and if it is necessary, it'll be referred back to the advisory board.
Correct.
Is it possible to get that done before the next advisory panel meeting?
It's possible.
Yes.
We'll definitely, we'll get to working on it.
When you submit an Attorney General's opinion, they have at least 6 weeks.
If not
Okay,
more.
And usually it's more, yeah.
Yeah.
But they have 6 weeks to start really
Could be the
making
end
a
of the
judgment.
year.
Judge Cordes,
if I may
we were going
clarify-
to do an internal analysis with our general counsel's
Yeah,
office.
that would be first,
Yeah,
yeah.
that'll be the first step, and I think it'll be the most expeditious approach.
And the only way to get it back to the advisory board is to actually have another meeting.
Understood. Thank you.
All right.
And Sherry Ferguson, can I ask one more time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, just for clarification. On that work group, are we allowed to talk to or get opinions from these people, and the people that are out in the field
Yes,
at
ma'am.
TDLR that are doing these investigations and inspections and see what their concerns and limitations, et cetera, are?
I would suggest that when we set the meetings, before we even do the invite, to have this discussion with the advisory board members as to who should be a part and participate in those discussions, so that we're not kind of guessing. If you have somebody particular you wanted to invite, we can have that discussion before the meeting is set. So the answer to your question is yes.
Yes, with a little maybe, how?
I would, this is Chairman Harris Spence, I would mention also, it's not going to be a public meeting, so you'd actually have to have them invited just to have discussion, so, I mean, just
We
keep
can
that in
do
mind.
that.
It won't, yeah, I'm sure you could probably bring in anybody to talk to, but just
Well,
understand that it's not going to be.
this fella
it won't
last
be
time-
It won't be published on our website, so we'd actually have to go out and find them and tell them that work group's going to set up to work.
And if you keep in mind, is that each of you are on the board because you have a constituency. And so we expect and would appreciate that you consult with and have that discussion. And if you think they're necessary to be at the meeting, I think that's within your discretion to do that. We would not, as Mr. Chairman indicated, this will not be a public meeting. It'll be a private internal meeting with invitees. And so if there's somebody you want to invite, I think we can have that discussion.
Yeah, we said we couldn't gather in more than 2 people at a
No,
time and all that.
That's the board members.
Okay.
Can't hit the quorum. But you got less than 4 members, you got less than a quorum on the work group, so that's fine.
Okay, so we're free to do it.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm sorry, what is quorum? Is it
Five.
5? So if we invited another member, that
You can't
would,
invite another board
he
member.
would chase us down.
Correct.
Okay.
And also just keep in mind, if you have the 4 members that are on one committee, they can't then go talk to a 5th member and say, this is what we chatted about. Oh my gosh, you're not gonna believe, he wore the red tie again.
I just got, my wife just got this.
Got a red tie on.
Oh my gosh. Scratch that.
Any more discussion on this?
If I may clarify, again, for the record, and without injecting new issues into the discussion, is that the issues that we presented, the 4 major issues, were 4 major issues that we determined were significant to present to the commission. But if you, as the work groups start to work, we may go through those comments and find some minor issues that relate to standards. And so in that event, I'd like to have the authority to roll those issues into those work groups so that we be comprehensive in our review of those comments.
Is that up to us to give you that authority?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to give you as much administrative and secretary authority as you feel like you need ever to help us ever.
Are these meetings going to be held via telephone conferencing?
We can, yes, ma'am. As we did in the earlier work groups, those who can attend, their presence is appreciated. Those who cannot, we will conference in so that everybody's able to participate.
What would the attendance be if you would choose to attend?
You would just come into the, appear here at the commission, wherever, not necessarily this room, but within the agency's offices, and we'll sit in a conference room and have a discussion.
Back downtown again?
No, not necessarily.
Oh, Lord, don't go downtown. It's hard enough getting here. Traffic.
Do we need a motion and a second to give you that authority?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion.
Actually, we need a second.
I'll be second.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor? Passes unanimous.
Thank you, members.
It's,
The motion was to give
we
Mr.
had a-
Johnson the ability to expand the standard of care discussions if there are some peripheral issues that come up, administrative and ministerial.
And the compliance piece, if we also have questions on that group, we could also, as I understood it, that motion was
whole-
also to incorporate the compliance work group if we had questions for Charles.
Absolutely.
Good point.
Any more discussion on this? Okay. I guess we're ready to back up to, then we decide to come back to staff reports at this time.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good job, Charles.
Back to
Thank
staff
you.
reports from the executive office.
Mr. Chairman, Brian Francis, Executive Director with
Sir.
TDLR. Just want to give you a brief update on a few items. On the legislative appropriations request, that is the device that all state agencies have to use in order to. I've got to catch a flight, so I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming out.
That's the device that all state agencies have to use to request additional funding for their programs. This cycle, every agency was asked to present a budget that was 4% less. Obviously, that creates some significant challenges for most of the agencies. TDLR met that requirement. We've submitted an LAR. We've had one presentation to the staff members for the Legislative Budget Board and to the Governor's Office on that budget. There are 5 exceptional items that we've included in there. Exceptional items are saying, we understand that we have to do a 4% less budget, but if we could get more money, here are the things that we're asking for. The first exceptional item is requesting 25 FTEs or employees to cover the Phase 2 Department of State Health Services programs that are coming to TDLR. As you're aware, last session, there were 14 programs that were sent to TDLR. Driver's education started last September. On October 3rd, we have 7 of those programs coming into play, and the Phase 2 programs will start around November of next year. And so we are simply trying to have the money catch up to the programs that are on their way to us. The other 3 items, 2, 3, and 4, relate to reinstating a portion of that 4% reduction. So our 4% reduction was 14 FTEs that we said we'll have to do without if we have to meet that requirement. We're asking for 11 of those employees to be reinstated if we get that heard. And then the final one is dealing with our IT infrastructure. As everyone's aware, that's the big issue here. There's a lot of assaults and attacks on information and databases and that sort of thing. In 2013, Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation, as well as about 13 other programs, underwent a very comprehensive IT security analysis. In that analysis, I identified some areas that we had weaknesses in. Last session, we requested the phase 1 portion of that, saying give us more money to hire security personnel for our IT systems, to beef up our software, and to allow us to have a more vigilant approach to our IT system. We are simply asking for the phase 2 portion of that recommendation or those findings. Additionally, we're asking for some external lighting on our building that's downtown. It's right across from the governor's mansion. There's no lighting on the outside. We are in proximity to the governor's mansion, literally a stone's throw away, but we do not throw stones at all. We have none.
Wouldn't be wise.
It would not be nice. It would just be poor, bad neighborly, right? So that's the overview on the legislative appropriations request. On strategic planning process, as always, we have a very strong, very healthy participation from the licensed breeder program and the folks that are interested in those programs. We appreciate you guys coming out. When you look at our strategic plan, which is on our webpage, I will encourage you to look at it. I believe you guys may even have copies in front of you. This cycle, the instruction said you can only go up to 20 pages in your strat plan. So it really made us be very concise and use an economy of words and how we presented our issues. But it really turned out to be one of the best things we've had, because when you really have to choose what you're going to say, it also makes you choose what you're going to focus your resources on. So that strategic plan is very focused, very targeted, and I'm really proud of the product that the staff came up with on that.
It's very well done, by the way.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's an outstanding document, and our agency, under Bill's leadership, has always been to not have that thing as something that's on the shelf. It is a living, breathing document, and the employees, I mean, they buy in. They have the core values that they live by daily, and so it's a great, great tool for us, and it's a great process to go through as an organization. And then, again, Mr. Chairman, at the beginning of the presentation, the most recent development is I'm the executive director, and I'm trying my best. So.
We're going to
Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And also, Joe, when you start bragging on him, you hadn't been here from the beginning. He's already ahead as big as it is. So, okay.
Can I ask
completed?
a question?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So related to the appropriations and specifically the FTEs, I have, I guess, 2 questions related to that. Can you discuss any direct effects on those reductions on this program?
Yeah.
And also, is there anything that we as an advisory board or that other advisory boards have done to enable or be supportive as you make those adjustments?
The 4% reduction that we did will not impact the resources that we have dedicated to the licensed breeder program. We did not indicate, we didn't reduce the number of inspectors that are tied to it. Frankly, the size of the licensing is not significant, so it hasn't harmed that, and our enforcement efforts and resources are still in place and intact for that. So that's not an area that we reduced in.
Okay.
And then these conversations, as well as just being part of our listserv, you know, I was looking at some information for Commissioner Yurko earlier today. We have 172, maybe it's 73 now, maybe it's 71, depending on the hour of the day, 71 licensees. But we have 1,959 folks that are subscribed to the listserv. There is a large amount of interest. A good number of those are not individuals, they're organizations. And we just need the organizations to continue that when there's a message about the rulemaking process, when there's a message about the efforts that the work group's about to bring back, that they're getting it out and helping us expand the lines of communication out there. And one more plug, we have the donation account. And if the folks, oh, you just wrote that down? Psychic. And so this is the one program that allows us to receive donations to help fund enforcement activities and training activities. And so if there are people listening, we're poor and we would like some money. But it helps us. We've used the resources from that program to train our inspectors. They've gone to animal control officer training, the academy down in Giddings. And it's really a really great tool for us, so I would just plug that as well.
And Sherry Ferguson, can I add, I have 2 law enforcement officers on my staff, and I offered them to the inspectors or investigators to help, because can we, again, I offered, but can we do that? Can we ask cooperation from outside agencies, law enforcement in particular, when you're going somewhere that somebody's pulling a gun or threatening or whatever, the investigators who do not have police powers, can we solicit the help from those kind of agencies? Because I know if we can help in Harris County, then there's possibly others that do care about animal, and in smaller communities that do care about animals, that would be willing to be a resource for the investigators. Can we do that?
You just did, and thank you. Christina Kaiser is the Director of Enforcement. Her team is the one that's
Yes.
going out there typically after a complaint's been filed.
Okay,
And
I will
so-
get with her because I brought some information
Exactly.
on our cruelty investigation program, and like I said, it is staffed by law enforcement.
That's great.
And we deal with sheriff in Fort Bend County. We deal with different law enforcement entities around there, and some throughout the state that I think would be very willing to help, so that it's not a problem for the investigators to try to find somebody.
Outstanding.
Sherry, you're in contact with all the other agencies that have law enforcement around the state, so in other regions of the state. Are you a good person to facilitate those communications with them as well?
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to be
Okay.
able to include the field investigators who do a very good job, if they need help.
Okay.
And with these unlicensed people, and get a little belligerent, I understand, as well as the these people and these people who hopefully will be bridged a little bit closer, because they're the ones out there that know who aren't doing what needs to be done. Right.
Okay, can we get back on point and
Actually,
move on here?
Before we move on, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Ferguson, just for the record, you indicated working with staff. And I'd just like to clarify that I assume your intent was to work with the directors of the divisions, who would then in turn work with staff.
Okay, I don't know the terminology, but I can get with the people and they'll tell me something straight.
Okay, that's why I just want to clarify that.
I just wanted to offer to try to help find, since we don't have any money, other people who might be willing to help, and just resources.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Is that it? We're ready to move on now?
Yes, sir.
Item number 2 and E is Compliance Division Report.
Good morning. For the record, I'm Russell Tolley, a program specialist for the Breeders Program in the Compliance Division. I just want to let you know we do outreach, and recently, in fact this past weekend, we attended the Texas Humane Legislation Network meeting. We host an informational booth there. I'd also like to thank another staff member, Jennifer Harless, with our field operations, for joining me at hosting that. It was a wonderful experience. I want to emphasize that I'm available to host other types of informational booths at other meetings that you might have or become aware of. Just send me an invitation. Some of the other issues that we work on in compliance is the annual animal inventory. We will be sending out reminders to all our licensed breeders at the end of this year or beginning of January. The inventory form needs to be filed at the beginning of each year. I'm also available for phone consultations. I get a lot of customer calls in, questions about the licensed breeder program, and I've provided a sample of some of those types of questions I answer in my report. At this time, I'm available to answer any questions you might have.
What's your phone number?
My phone number is 512-463-3225.
What's your email address?
russ.tolley@tdlr.texas.gov.
And your shoe size, sir?
And how do you
size
spell
11.
your last name? Russ dot T-U-L-L-Y?
It's Taulli.
How many events have you tabled at?
This is the first event for the past year. Prior events.
Okay, you don't know.
And is there a restriction on size?
For
of
the event?
Of the event?
No.
Over the last year, how many phone calls from inquisitive customers have you fielded? Can you estimate?
I can estimate for the breeders program, it's slacked off post the initial implementation of the bill. So I probably only receive a handful every month, maybe 5.
Would it be fair to say that the breeders and the humane organizations should all waive your fees when you go table at their events?
Absolutely.
Leave their what?
Waive their fees when he goes to
Oh.
table?
Oh, wait a minute, so we're starting to raise some, no, I'm teasing.
You make reference in your notes, some of the calls you have taken, how can I be exempt from having to obtain a breeder's license? Can you expound on that slightly?
The many breeders, not licensed breeders, but breeders are confused about, do I have to have 10 intact females? Is it 9? Is it 20? Do I have to sell more than 20 puppies a year or kittens a year? So I just clarify those issues for them.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Is that it?
Thank you. That's
Thank
it.
you. We're going to move on to E3, which is the Report from the Enforcement Division.
Good morning, board members. My name is Karen Cox. I'm the enforcement attorney assigned to give you your report today. It's a very brief report. You will notice that key statistics for fiscal year 2016, this is all of it. We opened 56 cases in this program, resolved 48 of them, 14 through agreed orders. We collected $22,940 in penalties, or assessed $22,000 in penalties, and collected $19,040. One important thing I'd like to note is some industry contacts. Our investigator, Don Vara, attends a meeting of Crosscheck every first Wednesday, and he updates law enforcement on the requirements of the licensed breeder law. There are 4 cases, 4 agreed orders listed in your report as case highlights. May I answer any questions at this time?
Sherry Ferguson, the 19,000 goes back into the breeder program, right?
That's correct. It goes into
Yes.
the, it's the only program that we're allowed to use the disciplinary penalties or administrative penalties.
Okay, I
to
thought
fund
so.
the account.
And what did you say about Vara? What does he do?
Investigator Vara, he's one of the lead investigators, and he attends a meeting of Crosscheck, which is an association of local and state law enforcement and regulatory agencies. It meets on the first Wednesday of each month, and he updates the people who go to that on the breeder law requirements.
As someone who's connected to compliance, to enforcement, you make note, there was one particular kennel that was penalized a little over $5,000 for various items. They failed to keep a valid license, primary enclosures, so on and so forth. Once you assess a penalty, is that breeder allowed to continue to breed, or do they pay the fine right away? Can you just give me the process?
Okay, there are a couple of ways this happens in an agreed order. If we do an agreed order and they pay the fine, then they are allowed, without any other sanction on their license, they're allowed to continue in operation. A license sanction would be a revocation or a suspension of the license, and in this particular case, it was just a fine, so he's allowed to continue operating. As far as paying the penalty, sometimes they pay it all at once, sometimes they pay it out over a course of 12 months, which would be whatever the fine in, or less than 12 months, depending on how long. And there would be different amounts depending on how the lawyer negotiates it. But they can either pay it all at once, or they can have a payment plan. And outside of extraordinary circumstances, all of the payment plans have to be concluded 12 months from the date the agreed order is initially entered.
So if that breeder refuses to pay, refuses to come into compliance, and continues to breed, what steps as enforcement do you take to ensure the dog's welfare, the cat's welfare, and to assure that that person will not continue to breed?
We are allowed to enter what's called a cease and desist order. If they enter an agreed order, they have to make at least one initial payment, or we don't enter the agreed order. So they've made one payment. Typically, if a person fails to follow through the requirements of an order, the first step is that we initiate a license revocation proceeding for failing to comply with that agreed order. And if they continue to operate after that, after we revoke their license, the first step would probably be to issue a cease and desist order and then to prosecute them for unlicensed activity after that.
30 days, 90 days, 120 days, is there a time frame?
No, there's not any set time frame.
Can I make a comment? Previously, this is Babette Ellis. Previously, we had discussed the issues with people who were trying to get the money to pay the fine, as we wanted to put in the initial, if you pay any money, it stops a little bit of things, because if they are in a breeding system, the understanding is within 90 days or 60 days, you can't stop a female dog from being pregnant or a cat from being pregnant. So no matter what, you're in the process that you cannot stop them from doing something, it's already done. So I think one of the good things that you're hearing is if they pay any money, and I don't remember what that is, it stops the decease, of
Process.
animals who would kind of be thrown out there for no reason. You can't sell them, you can't keep them, you can't do anything with them, versus making sure that the process can continue for compliance. And that's the goal, is what can we do to keep the compliance factor going?
If I understand your question correctly, I cannot imagine a circumstance where if someone missed a payment on an agreed order, on a payment plan, that there's simply no possible way that we could stop their license the next day. There would have to open a case and investigate it. And I can also assure you that our process is, even if they miss a payment, if they come into compliance and pay what they owe, we dismiss the revocation proceeding.
Yeah, we were very much concerned when we set some of this discussion up in one of our work groups for your division, because we didn't know what would happen if, you stop them from doing this altogether and they had pregnant females. So I think that's something that everybody needs to remember, that it may not seem quick enough, the hands of government, but we're also thinking about the welfare of the dogs and cats as well.
Ms. Ellis,
Thank
if I
you.
may interject, I recall that discussion we had in the initial rulemaking, and I believe the outcome was that each case is on a case-by-case basis.
Right.
And that the ultimate objective is to make sure the animals are cared for, and our decisions will be made in accordance with that standard.
Thank you. That's exactly it. Just wanted to help kind of the technical.
Anything else? Okay. You done?
Thank you, Karen, good job.
Sir?
I was just thanking Karen for an outstanding job.
Let's move on to E5, the licensing division report.
Mr. Chairman, do you want to do field operations first?
Yeah, E4.
Yes.
E4.
Excuse me, 4. Field operations report.
Tanya's pretty sensitive,
We don't mind.
She was begging for time off.
We can go after licensing, it's no problem. Good morning still. My name is Tanya Guthrow. I'm the Director of Field Operations. And what that means is my staff are the folks who go out and perform inspections. And get this situated. In our report today, the first item is the most common violations, and these are the most common violations that have been identified during our inspection process. So this may be different than the common violations you would see in enforcement cases, because while if we identify serious violations, we do write a report to enforcement. Enforcement is also dealing with consumer complaints. One of the things that really stands out is a lot of the violations you can see are for standards of care. Another point of interest, though, is to notice that
Each of these different sections can include a variety of different types of violations. So even though a number of different items may be listed here, it is possible that it was only one or two of the items under the particular section that was the problem. A big item for us in our division that's coming up is we're moving to an e-inspection process. And what that means is that instead of handwriting notes during the inspection, inspectors will be able to note violations on a tablet. And the violations and information regarding the inspection will be electronically transferred into our databases instead of hand typed or data entered. That process, though, isn't expected to be even rolling out until about 6 months from now. And we have under upcoming events, as Russ pointed out, we had participation at the the annual National Animal Cruelty Prosecution Conference this last weekend, and we have plans to attend the Professional Canine Breeders Association meeting in Mount Pleasant on October 7th and 8th. And for our division personnel updates, one of the things I wanted to do is just list who our breeder inspectors are and commend them for all of their hard work. It can be, it's a little bit different than some of our other programs in that, of course, the breeders oftentimes are not located in our urban centers, so we have to coordinate with the breeder and plan a little bit when we're going to go out there, and it's oftentimes long drives. And of course, sometimes you know, you never know what you're going to encounter when you go out in the field. In addition to that, we've had a number of promotions and new hires in the division. But that's our report for today. Any questions?
Sherry Ferguson, what part did you take in the prosecutors' convention? Because I was there.
Yeah, I believe at the table we had Jennifer Harless along with Russ Tolley.
Okay.
Any more questions?
At this time? Okay.
Ready to move on?
Thank you.
Thank you. And we're at licensing division and the report from licensing.
Good morning. I am Tarsha Red, licensing manager. Not a whole lot to report. The breeder population has kind of remained steady. As it was mentioned earlier, we have about 172 licensed breeders, and we've had 8 new breeders licensed and 4 renewals licensed in the month of August. But that's because most of the renewals happen in the month of September and October based on when the program initiated in 2012. Any questions?
Is there any projection about how many people who should fall under this regulation who are not currently in the program and licensed? Is there do we have some kind of an idea on how many people, groups, facilities that would be? Or a best guess, or?
You mean unlicensed activity?
The people who should fall under this category who are not currently who are not currently licensed. Do we have an idea of how many people out there should be but aren't, that we need to look about getting into the program?
This is Brian Francis. Absolutely not. I mean, the way
anybody's best guess.
It's so, the way the statute is written, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, you have the traditional category of unlicensed activity, people who meet the requirement that should be licensed and are not. Right. And then you have a larger spectrum of folks who are just not regulated.
Yeah, but do we have an idea how many people we should be looking at bringing into the fold?
No. Absolutely not. No way. Because the person that's even required to be licensed in a day could modify their business, properly modify their business practice, and have fewer than the number of intact females, and they're no longer required to be licensed. So the fluidness of how a business model can change makes that number absolutely impossible.
But we can reach out to some of the breeder groups and ask that if they have any ways of making projections that they help us get some of those numbers. I know some of the humane groups have some projections. Obviously nobody knows, but some projections But we can be open to that feedback in our working groups, correct?
Yes.
Can I please ask a
Correct.
question? Is there a breakout of how many dog canine breeders versus cat feline breeders in that number?
I don't have that with me, but I can get it for you.
Thank you.
The last time I checked, I thought we were at 4 cat breeders, but
Yeah.
that's been.
I can't, I'm
At
sorry, I can't
4?
hear.
Yeah, I thought it was at 4.
4 cat breeders.
That one, please do not quote me on that one.
And do we have any information when people drop out of the program? Any information, or they just don't renew?
People often just don't renew. Like we have, right now, the population is at 168, but that's because we have a few licenses that have not renewed, and then we have several that are pending renewal right now. So September will be a very busy month for renewals, and that'll determine where the numbers go from there. There's just no way of knowing.
There was a discussion when there is a for sale ad and the licensing number, and I don't know this, but have we found that everybody is using their number in the advertising for licensing, or is there a way that we're monitoring the licensing number that's being used?
We don't actually monitor the
Okay.
sale ads and licensing, and I'm not sure that any of our divisions do.
I mean, this sounds terrible, but somebody could possibly say I'm license number 132.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's a crummy thing to say, but, and it wouldn't be their license.
Right.
Okay, just questioning.
Any
More
additional
questions?
questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on to agenda item I. The recommendations for the agenda items for the next meeting is, the next meeting, we're going to have the work groups. We're going to need time for any kind of cost analysis or anything like that going on before the next meeting.
Mr. Chairman?
We got the holidays.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that we'll have the traditional staff reports, and we will provide an update on the commission's action regarding the rule review. We'll also have an agenda item that deals with the, an update on the recommendations from the work groups, if they are at the point in time. I believe that the cost analysis would come subsequent to that, because we don't know what the work groups are going to
That's what I was-
recommend. Are they going to
okay.
recommend keep
We
the
got-
same size, doubling size, or half size?
It would be better to set the meeting for, well, right, okay, I'm jumping ahead right now.
Yes, you are.
Let's get back to,
That's all right. So I
Yeah,
think
this
just
is
to answer your
state-
question directly, we'll
Yeah.
have an item for the work
Right.
groups to present their work product and make the recommendations. And
Okay.
then from there, we'll have agenda items.
But
What
you've done a great
recommendations do I
job of
have
moving
for
us
a-
forward.
do what?
You got
I said,
compliments.
But you've done a great job at moving this meeting forward in a timely manner.
Well, thank you.
We're gonna double your salary.
That's right.
Yeah, thank you.
2 cups of coffee.
Exactly.
And a nickel and a nickel to get me a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have what's the recommendations for the agenda items for the next meeting?
We have the outstanding issue about stacking, the determination from the attorney.
Correct, we'll
That's-
provide some
Basically,
feedback.
everything that's gonna be from the work groups.
No, the, how to read the statute related to stacking only.
Definitely have that.
What else?
I think that's it, and as always, if there are other issues, Tamla's gonna be available.
Yeah.
All right. And how many advisory commission members have to be suggesting it? Is it a minimum of 2 for an agenda item?
We
Charles?
typically defer to the chair. on that.
Okay, do I need to accept that as an agenda item? Is that what you're asking?
We're gonna have it on there
ask?
either way, because it's something that we'd committed to providing back to the committee
Okay.
at their next meeting.
If I need to ask, then I'm asking.
Okay. Granted. Any other? Let's move on to J, discussion of time, date, and location of the next committee meeting. We need to, has anybody got a suggestion for what they want there? We want to leave that up to
I want to leave
the
it up
department.
to department.
Mr. Chairman, here's
Okay.
what the department's
We
thinking,
don't know.
that we use the good part of October to have the work groups meet, do their bidding and do their stuff, and then maybe have possible meeting dates of November 10th, 14th, or the 17th.
And we will
We'll have, at that time, I think the way we've handled it in the past before.
We'll have Tim, we'll send those
is
dates.
Send out and closer to that time, try to, Tamara will handle it like she's been handling.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Which means the
Ask that
17th?
Can I ask that we set that as soon as possible, just because we are creeping up on the holidays?
Absolutely. We'll have Tim, we'll send that email out as soon as possible.
Well, the work groups have to meet though,
Yeah,
and
the
they
work
may
groups
need
do.
more
We'll
than
make it
one
October.
meeting,
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
We've had several in the past.
And I also would like to get notice, 'cause I'd like to be able to attend and get your feedback, so I
Right.
could be a proper liaison to the board.
That leads me to the question, can any of the other commissioners attend the work group meetings, or should they, or, I've never
They
done
do
this
not.
before. Okay.
Typically, it's usually a lot of staff in there on the compliance groups, or even going back from a committee member Ellis's experience in the past when she was working with the criminal conviction group. Enforcement had a lot of their staff members that were providing that
You will
and
be,
rolling up their sleeves.
you will be sick of Charles Johnson before we're through.
I was before I got.
You'll be sick of Charles Johnson before we're through.
Charles was sick of some of us as well.
Charles has been great.
Exactly. Exactly.
Charles has been great.
Okay, do I have a motion for adjournment?
I move, we adjourn this meeting.
Do I have a second? Second. I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, right hand. Unanimous? Secretary?
It was nice meeting you, and I look forward to working with you on this committee.